Hola, pues yeah, in this video we're going to talk about the relative pronouns. We're going to look through a bunch of examples and see if it helps maybe clear up any doubts that you might have. Um, I'm going to do a separate video about pronouns in general. So this will just be restricted to what are called the relative pronouns. So let's just jump right into some examples here. All right, so as you can see, we have two basic situations, and then we'll see a couple different other ones as well, where you have, first of all, the situation where you do not have a comma, pause, or preposition, and then the other one is where you do have a comma, pause, or preposition, right? And notice there are a couple of similarities. So like these ones here, right? Que, donde, lo que, cuyo, cuya, cuyos, cuyas, all those are also here, right? And so in the second case where there is a comma, pause, or preposition, you have additional options, right? Possibilities. Okay. Notice also a couple little differences, like for example, que, when there's no comma, pause, or preposition, it can be that or who. Whereas when there is a comma, pause, or preposition, it normally means which or who. Right? So that versus which. There are a couple other little small differences, like lo que just means what here, but after the comma, pause, or preposition, it can be what or which, etc. Right? Notice also here, we have lo que just by itself when there's no comma, pause, or preposition. And then when there is one of those three things, lo cual is a second option, right? And hopefully the examples that we're about to look through will help clear some of that up, right? Just a little reminder, like what are the most common prepositions? There are a few more, but they're very rarely used. But you can Google, preposiciones en español and get a longer list. There are a few other options, but these are kind of the most common ones, right? So they're generally these little short words, to, this could be like before, like under, like under the conditions of, or something like that, with, against, as you get por and para over here, etc. Right? And we'll see a few examples there, right? Another situation slightly different from, if there's no comma, pause, or preposition, or if there is, would be at the beginning of a sentence, right? Al principio de una oración. And so here, the possibilities are also limited, right? So we have el que, la que, los que, las que, quién es, and then lo que. Those are the only options we have when we're talking about at the beginning of a preposition, right? Okay, so now looking at some examples, we've got que without a comma, pause, or preposition can mean that or who. So for example, la cosa que más me interesa es que aprendamos. Right, so the thing that most interests me is that we learn. So that would, in this case, it means that, and then in the second case, la persona que más me interesa ya tiene pareja, sad face, right? So the person who most interests me already has a partner, right? Pareja can mean, boyfriend, girlfriend, or just partner, however you want to look at it. Right? With donde, it means where, right? So estoy en el cuarto donde tengo mis libros. I am in the room where I have my books. Right? So a cuarto is a location. So we would use where instead of that or who, right? Lo que means what. So eso es lo que te decía, right? That is what I was telling you. Right? And notice in this case, lo que, it's actually neuter. So it's neither masculine or feminine, right? So it's that is what I was telling you. What is that? I don't know, right? It's not a masculine or feminine thing. It's just a thing, right? So eso, also notice that it's not masculine, right? That's neuter, right? The masculine form would be ese, right? And then the feminine is esa. So masculine ese, feminine esa, neuter eso, right? And so the lo que kind of goes with that as a neuter, right? That, so if it were masculine, it'd be el que, right? So we'll just get rid of that. And then with cuyo, cuya, cuyos, cuyas, technically it's not really a pronoun. It's more of a acts as an adjective in Spanish. And we know that because it goes with the gender and number of the thing it's referring to, right? Of the second thing it's referring to. So, for example, es un cantante cuya canción más famosa es Tiny Dancer. So it's la canción, so it's cuya, right? Es un cantante cuyas canciones más famosas son Tiny Dancer y Rocket Man. Right? He is a singer whose most famous songs are Tiny Dancer and Rocket Man. In this case, it's las canciones, that's plural, so it's cuyas, right? And so if it was something masculine singular, then it would be cuyo, masculine plural, cuyos, right? Okay. Now, before we get into like when there is a comma preposition, the other thing I want to point out is that notice all these cases where there is no comma or preposition, basically we're just we're like in this case, la cosa que más me interesa es que aprendamos, right? So there are lots of things, right? An infinite number of things. But here I'm specifying the thing that most interests me, right? And so this is it's called restrictive, and we'll see that a little bit later. But we have a whole bunch of possibilities. I'm going to restrict it just to this specific case, right? This one thing, the one that most interests me, right? And so we don't have a need for a comma or a pause in those cases, right? In that, as we'll see in a second here. So if we go down here to a case like this with the comma or the pause. So mis libros que son muchos están en mi oficina. My books, which are many, are in my office. Here, I'm talking about all of my books, not just some of them. So it's my books, all of which, by the way, are a lot. There are a lot of them. There are many of them are in my office. All of them are in my office. You know, here I'm not restricting anything. I'm talking about all of the books in this case. And there are a lot of them. Mi amiga Ana, que estudia español, va a graduarse pronto. So my friend Ana, who studies Spanish, is going to graduate soon or early. So here I'm just talking about Ana, right? That one friend who studies Spanish. She, by the way, studies Spanish. I put it after a pause, right, or a comma. So I'm not talking about, like, it's not like I have three friends who are named Ana, and I'm only talking about the one who speaks Spanish, right? I'm just talking about one friend, Ana. That's all I'm talking about here, who, by the way, studies Spanish. So I set it off aside between commas when it's written or with pauses in speech, right? So that's called, these are non-restrictive versus, you know, this restrictive one here, right? Where it's of all the things that there are, the one that most interests me, right? Okay. So now, you know, just to give some more examples of all these cases, right? So donde, where, or it could be wherever, right? So estoy en mi oficina donde tengo mis libros. I'm in my office where I have my books. So I'm in my office where, by the way, I have all my books, right? I'm not talking about like I have two offices and this is the one where I have my books and there's this other one where I don't have my books, right? I'm just talking about my office where, by the way, I have my books. So I put that pause there, right? Vamos a donde tú quieras. Here, this is a preposition, right? And notice in English, we don't necessarily need that preposition. So it's like, we'll go wherever you want, or we'll go to wherever you want, right? We could put the preposition in or not. But here in this case, it means more like wherever than where, right? I mean, it could be we'll go where you want also, right? Either way. But notice here it's after a comma, here it's after a preposition. Then we have lo que or lo cual. And notice I just made a note there. It's only singular, right? You can't have it can't be plural ever. And I'll get into that a little bit later too. But the main point here is, again, it's neuter or neutral. Neuter is technically what it should be, as I mentioned before. So, for example, me gusta cantar, lo cual or lo que no le gusta mi gato. So singing gusts me, which doesn't gust my cat, right? So, you know, I like singing, which my cat does not like, right? I'll talk a little bit more about gustar in a different video as well. But notice here, you know, so I like singing, which, by the way, my cat does not like. So it's after a pause. See? And I can use either lo que or lo cual. Lo cual just sounds a little bit more formal than lo que. Here we have todos hemos llegado, por lo que or por lo cual podemos empezar. All of us have arrived. And in English, we would translate it as something like so or therefore we can begin, right? But literally, this is kind of like for which, right? Or for which reason, for, you know, for that reason we can begin, something like that, right? So we'll say it means which, but really we wouldn't translate it that way. We would translate it as something like so or therefore, right? Okay, now moving on to cuyo, cuya, cuyos, cuyas with a comma or a preposition. So Elton John, whose most famous song is Tiny Dancer, is 73 years old, right? So again, we got that sort of by the way sense, right? Elton John, whose most famous song, by the way, is Tiny Dancer, is 73 years old, right? We set it off with the commas or with pauses when we're speaking. And then here's an example with a preposition, right? So Elton John, en cuya casa he estado es simpático. So Elton John, in whose house I have been, is nice. By the way, I've been in his house, which I haven't, but yeah, I'm sure somebody has. See? Okay, then we've got quienes, who, whom. So Elton John, these, and those, the similarity between, you know, these, well, actually with these last three, right? So quienes, el que, la que, los que, las que, and then el cual, lo cual, la cual, los cuales, las cuales. Notice how similar all of these are, right? So Elton John, who has some famous songs, is 73 years old, right? So Elton John, who, by the way, has some famous songs, is 73 years old. See? And then Elton John, with whom I've worked, by the way, is 73 years old. After the preposition there, right? And then we've got Elton John, who has some famous songs, is 73 years old. Elton John, with whom I've worked, is 73 years old, right? So notice these are basically the same sentence, right? They're just, we have an option to use quien if we want because it's a person, but we could also use el que, and we can also use el cual, right? Elton John, who has some famous songs, is 73 years old. Notice the translations of these three are the same in English, right? So we have Elton John, quien tiene canciones famosas, Elton John, el que tiene canciones famosas, Elton John, el cual tiene canciones famosas. They're all translated the same way in English. Elton John, who has some famous songs. Elton John, who has some famous songs. Elton John, who has some famous songs. So basically, we're just being a little bit fancier when we go from, and so from quien is like kind of the least fancy, and then el que is a little more fancy, and el cual is kind of the fanciest way, right? So, and kind of the least fancy would be just que, right? Okay. Now going back to the case of at the beginning of a sentence. So we can say like el que, la que, los que, las que, meaning those who, he who, she who, etc. Right? So just to give one example, la que llegue primero gana. She who arrives first wins. Right? Little side note, there's a subjunctive there, right? Because we don't know who actually is going to win, right? Who's going to arrive first. right? But we do know for sure that that person is going to win, so that's indicative. Okay. So this is she who llegue primero gana, right? She who first arrives first, right? If it was he who arrives first, then it'll be el que, right? If it were they who arrive first, or those who arrive first, I should say, then it'd be los que lleguen primero ganan, etc. The women who arrive first, like those who, but meaning only women, be las que lleguen primero ganan. See? And then we've got quien or quienes, who or whoever, right? So quien llegue primero gana. So whoever arrives first wins, right? There, you know, I guess maybe in some places you might say who arrives first wins, but I think it's whoever is probably the most common way to say that. Whosoever wins, whosoever arrives first wins, and maybe another option. And then lo que at the beginning, right? Lo que más me interesa es que aprendamos. What interests me is that we learn, right? What most interests me is that we learn. The thing that most interests me is that we learn. But notice here, you know, that's neither masculine nor feminine, right? Like that we learn is just an action, right? And we don't know if it's masculine or feminine, so it's the neuter lo que, right? And again, just a reminder, normally lo que and lo cual go together, right? Lo que, lo cual, but not at the beginning of a sentence, right? Here in the middle of the sentence, you have the option of the two. Here at the, that was in the middle, in the beginning of the sentence, it can only be lo que. See? Okay, so now going back to that point I briefly made earlier, where we have restrictive versus non-restrictive pronouns. So a restrictive situation versus non-restrictive situation. So, for example, las casas que son verdes son grandes, right? The houses which are green are big, right? So here we have 3 houses, all of them are green, right? So it's just a little side note, right? The houses, which by the way are green, are big. So all these houses are big, right? We're not restricting. We're not taking a set of houses and only talking about some of them. We're talking about all of them. Whereas here in the restrictive case, we're talking about just a subset, right? We have 4 houses here, but we're only talking about the green ones, right? We're being restrictive. So las casas que son verdes son grandes. So the houses that are green are big. Just the green ones, not all of them, right? And so that's, again, notice we don't use commas when we're speaking that way. When we're restricting, we have a whole bunch of options, and we're just talking about some of those options. Some within the bigger set, we don't need a pause or a comma. And then just another note about, you know, lo que and lo cual versus el que and los que. So you know, it's just the masculine ones here. So for example, mi amigo el que me ha dado un regalo es simpático. So my friend, who by the way has given me a gift, is nice, right? So that's masculine, right? My friend, mi amigo, is masculine. Plural, right? Mis amigos, los que me han dado un regalo son simpáticos, right? So my friends who have given me a gift, by the way, are nice, right? So in both those cases, we got something that's masculine, my friend or my friends, right? But here, let's take me gusta cantar, lo que or lo cual no le gusta mi gato, to look at that example again, right? Singing gusts me, which doesn't gust my cat, right? So this, me gusta cantar, is neither masculine nor feminine, it's neuter, right? And so notice that el que is masculine, lo que is neuter. And then los que is the plural of the masculine. And there's no plural for this, right? It can't be plural. It's just this thing that we can't identify as masculine or feminine. And then an interesting case here where we can see how Spanish is more clear than English. All right, so let's take mis amigos me dieron un regalo, lo que me hizo llorar. Right, so it's my friends gave me a gift, which made me cry. Right, and then mis amigos me dieron un regalo, el cual me hizo llorar, which would be my friends gave me a gift, which made me cry. Same. Notice it's the same in English in both cases, right? Yeah. But Spanish has that difference there. And the difference is in the first case, right? The thing that made me cry is the fact that my friends gave me a gift. That made me cry. The fact that they gave me a gift. In the second case, the gift made me cry. Right? This gift made me cry, not the fact that they gave it to me. Right? So in English, if I said to you, my friends gave me a gift which made me cry, you might ask, well, what is it that made you cry? Is it the fact that they gave you a gift, or was it the gift that made you cry? Whereas in Spanish, that's already clear by, if you say lo que or lo cual or el que, el cual, right? So that clarifies, and you don't have to clarify like you would in English for that. So yeah, so that's that for that. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to go through. I'd be happy to send you this Word document if you want as well. Just send me an email, let me know. Okay. Hasta la próxima. Nos vemos.